because it's not their job to necessarily give you a full breakdown of these games. It is their job to entertain first and then come up with these fucking storylines that they can push to entertain the people that's watching. Okay. All season long, Baltimore has been the darlings of the NFL. And rightfully so. What Lamar Jackson did this season, he's going to be the league MVP. What we was able to retool our defense and be able to come out and be one of the best defense, I think the best defense in the second half of the season, if I'm not mistaken. And then all of a sudden, Tennessee gets a grinded out win against New England, and it was an excellent win. But then all of a sudden, now Baltimore is in huge trouble, and now we can't stop Derrick Henry. And I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, like, what the fuck are you trying to sell us right now? What the fuck are you guys talking about? You're literally talking about the wrong shit. The wrap up, what I'm saying is, you got to take what these analysts are saying with a grain of salt. Because they're not giving you, I feel like they're not telling you how they truly feel. I feel like they're trying to sell a story. And if they are selling how they really feel, it's bullshit. And they don't watch the actual teams that they're talking about. Because the narrative that they're bringing up is, okay, how is the Ravens defense going to stop Derrick Henry? And I'm like, okay, that's fair. And that's definitely a point of emphasis. But the question should be, what the fuck is Tennessee going to do to stop Baltimore's offense that has literally been dominating every single team that you can think of, the top echelon of teams throughout this whole season? For instance, Nick Wright on First Things First, he says some shit, and Nick Wright is my man. That's one of the dudes I like. Out of all the people, him and Matt Kellerman are the two people I like to listen to the most because they make the most sense. But he says some shit where he said, all season long, Baltimore beat the good teams by running the ball, and then they blew out the other teams because they couldn't stop the run or the pass. And I'm like, okay. He said, so yeah, to beat Baltimore, you have to limit Lamar Jackson or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right. So the teams that we did beat, like those closer games, I'm pretty sure that they were trying to not only stop the run, because that's the gameplay. You got to stop the run. You got to stop Baltimore's run game. I'm pretty sure those teams were trying to stop the run. It's not that they're not game planning for it. It's that you fucking can't. And there's not a team that has been able to do it. The team that did it the best was probably San Fran and Buffalo during our 12-game winning streak. But it's just a fucking an offense and a running game that is not just simply you got to do this and then you win the game. It doesn't work that way. It's more to it than that. You got to give a deeper analysis of that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can do that shit. That's easy. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck are you guys talking about right now? You're talking about we got to stop Derrick Henry. Okay, yeah, that's definitely, like I said, that's definitely an emphasis. But why aren't we talking like you got to stop this Baltimore offense? What the fuck is Tennessee going to do to stop Lamar Jackson in this offense? What is going to happen if Tennessee gets down 14-3 in the first quarter and now you got to rely on Ryan Tannehill to throw the ball? And, you know, Ryan Tannehill has played well, but he plays his best when he's able to go off play action from Derrick Henry and to be able to get a little bit extra time and make those throws downfield. We got an elite secondary. We blitz like crazy, which Tannehill, by the way, is, I think, the number one quarterback against the blitz. But he hasn't gone against a secondary like Baltimore's this season. Nowhere near it. I don't get the whole premise of this shit was just kind of pissing me off, just listening to it. And it just made me realize, I can't listen to these people because they don't pay attention to it.
I think you have to listen, like you said, for entertainment.
Yes,
you know, because I think it's incredibly ironic that whether it's, Skip or Shannon, Max and Stephen A., Nick Wright and whoever he's got on with them, that all these guys always have differing opinions, right? I think they meet up, they have a few topics they want to talk about. All right, Max, I'm going to take this side of it. All right, Stephen A., I'll take this side of it. And they just let them go, right? And I think that's super entertaining. The first thing I always say, I love Stephen A., not because he's always right with his analysis, not because he's always right with what he's talking about, because he's entertaining. He's an entertaining guy.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think Max makes the most sense. I usually kind of agree with his opinions the most, but that's what it's there for. It's there for entertainment. For me, getting back to this game, I feel like it's all about the ifs with this one, right? And I feel like the Ravens have way fewer ifs. And I'm not talking about like in their roster or anything like that. I'm talking about the ifs during the game, okay? I feel like for the Titans to win, okay, it's if they can slow down Lamar Jackson, if they can somehow hold in check all three of their tight ends, if they cannot let Hollywood Brown go deep on him over the top, and then, if they can get Derrick Henry going, and if Tannehill can keep going with what he's been doing, right? Playing kind of way better than he ever has at any point in his career.
Right.
And I think there's all those ifs. And what really do you have to do if you're the Baltimore Ravens? If you can stop Derrick Henry. For me, that's what it is. If they can stop Derrick Henry, period, they will win this game. I don't think Tannehill goes into Baltimore and wins you that game. So for me, it's kind of an easy story here. Like you were saying, there's this whole narrative that's been built around Tennessee, kind of the Cinderella story all of a sudden, which they have been. And to their credit, I like them a lot. I like the whole team. But I just don't think that they can compete in Baltimore, with Baltimore coming off of a bye. I think that's something it's important to mention. Also, that Harbaugh's been really good traditionally off of a bye. And I don't think there's any way that the Titans pull this one out.
What you just did there is what they should do on TV. Simple as that. You gave an analysis of how this game is going to happen or why you think it's going to happen, not some, Baltimore's defense are not going to be able to stop Derrick Henry because of what happened to the New England defense and blah, 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 blah. And then they had a couple of weeks off. They haven't been in and shit like that. I'm like, the first thing what you just said, Harbaugh coming off of buys is fucking phenomenal. The dude doesn't lose.
Yeah, it's him and Andy Reid.
Yeah.
And that's bleeding into the next game.
Yes.
But I think both of those two coaches are going to be incredibly tough off of a bye. And really the last thing is, I think the Titans are a very tough out, but I think they're just that, out. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think this is the end of their story this year.
You're able to give this Baltimore Ravens team a chance. So Lamar Jackson hasn't played since week 16, so he's well rested. Mark Ingram, they're saying that he might be game time, or they say he's going to play. He's questionable he's questionable going into the game. Honestly, if I'm Baltimore, I wouldn't even play him. I'll just let Gus Edwards, who, by the way, if you're not a Baltimore Ravens fan, Gus Edwards, as a runner, I should say, between the tackles or period, he's a better runner than Mark Ingram is. Mark Ingram is a better all-around back in terms of catching, pass protection, and then, all
say the blocking for sure.
Right. But in terms of like running in between the tackles or just running period, Gus Edwards is a better runner of the football.
I agree.
And on top of that, my man Justice Hill, who's a rookie, he started to come into his own these last couple of weeks as well. So I'm excited for that duo there, even if Mark Ingram isn't 100%. Mark Andrews has emerged as one of the best tight ends in the league. And then, like you said, Hollywood Brown, he's always a consistent deep threat. Greg Roman, the play calling, that the schemes that he's able to draw up for our offense is just phenomenal, man. And on top of that, Tennessee's defensive coordinator is Dean Pease, who was a defensive coordinator for Baltimore during our Super Bowl run. So we know what type of defense they're bringing to us. Greg Roman has won against that defense. Like Dean Pease, they went against each other in the Super Bowl. So that's kind of nice little cool match.
It's a fun name to say.
Dean Pease.
What is it?
Dean Pease.
Dean Pease. That's a fun one, man. That's a good one right there. I like that.
So, this whole narrative that like we should be worried about Tennessee, and you got to give them their respect. They beat New England in New England, and then they're hot right now. They've won, what is it? I think 7 of their last 11 games or some shit like that. I think that was the stat line.
Yeah.
And they dominated Houston's backups to get into the playoffs and all that there. But this is, to be honest, man, I'm not trying to sound cocky. I'm not worried about this game at all. Like Ryan Tannehill, he's a nice story. He came in, he played very well. Like Tennessee's team literally turned around since he started. I'm not worried about Ryan Tannehill coming into Baltimore and fucking beating us. Derrick Henry is a monster. He's a monster. He's a beast. When have you seen a Ravens team the last team that had really real good success running the ball against us was San Fran, and before that was Nick Chubb. That was before, so the Nick Chubb when he went off against us in week 4?
Yeah, I remember. 4. Yeah, it was somewhere around there. It was early in the year, first month. It was like their second loss, right? When they fell to 2-2.
That was that second loss. Yep.
Yeah.
That was week 4 when Nick Chubb went off on us. He had one crazy big run that gave him the bloated stats, but other than that, like throughout the whole game, he was contained. So I'm not worried about Derrick Henry getting off on us. The narrative should be is how the fuck Tennessee is going to stop Baltimore's offense. And then, honestly, to me, again, this is another blowout on Saturday. I think we got 2 blowouts on Saturday. This one here, I see a score of like 40-10.
40, something like that?
Something of that nature
really?
there. Yeah, it's going to get to the point where they can't rely on trying to grind out Derrick Henry. Baltimore's front 7, we got 2 fucking 350-pounders up there. How do you block? You got to use 2 people to block them.
Yeah, man.
Like, we are built to stop Derrick Henry. And then we gotta make Ryan, like Earl Thomas said, man, if they gotta make Ryan Tannehill beat us throwing the ball, that's not gonna work out too well for them. And I 100% agree.
In the vein of Stephen A. and Max here, I'm gonna take a little bit of a contrarian point here. Now, I think it's very possible that what you just said absolutely takes place. If Lamar can come out hot and just start slinging the ball, start doing his thing right from the beginning of the game, I think it will be like a 40-10 score. I could see that totally. But what I think might happen, okay, and this is just a maybe. Lamar is still a young quarterback,
that's
right? As good as he's been, right? Sometimes young quarterbacks, they find themselves, not necessarily in over their head, but they find themselves in a place where they're not, right up to it. Lamar hasn't played in 2 weeks. I think he might get off to a slow start. I've seen that happen a few times throughout the year. I followed him more often than maybe I would have followed another quarterback because in both of my fantasy leagues, Lamar was my guy. He was my quarterback. Hey. So I followed him very closely.
Respect.
Much to the chagrin of anyone that was around me at the time while I'm watching football, while I'm playing fantasy football, because I'm a terrible person at that time period. But I remember there were games. I think there was a game against Cincinnati, if you recall it, where throughout the first, I want to say 28 minutes of the first half, Lamar had done nothing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he kicks it into a gear and scores 2 touchdowns before the first half is over. That was a Cincinnati game?
That was Cleveland.
Cleveland game. Okay, so the second Cleveland game maybe?
Yep.
Where he started slow,
yep,
and then all of a sudden just turned it on and they beat him, whatever the hell it was, 35-20 or whatever it was. But I think that this game might be closer because I think he might get off to that little bit of a slow start. I don't know that they're going to have the opportunity to score 40 points. Because if nothing else, Tennessee grinds out that clock.
Yeah.
Tannehill's going to throw the ball 12 times, right? 15 times, right? By design. So I think the clock is going to go. And unless they get some big hitters, and a nice long one to Andrews or a nice long one to Snead or to Hollywood Brown, I don't think that there's going to be enough opportunity for them to have the ball to put up 40 points. Not that they couldn't.
Right.
Just that the game scheme, the game flow, the script of the game, it's not going to play out that way. And I could also see, Tennessee getting a late, garbage time touchdown at the end. I think it's not going to be close, right? I think the Ravens will handle them, but I think that the Titans cover. And I could very much see it being somewhere along the lines of 30-21 or something, 30-23 or something like because of a late score.
I got you.
And that's where I'm at. I agree with you entirely. The Ravens will win this game, and I think that they are the way better team, and it won't be close as you're watching it, but I think the final score might be closer than you think.
Yeah, you're saying the score won't indicate necessarily
how much they dominated. Because I think just the way Tennessee plays football, it's going to be very hard to put 40 on them, not because their defense is so great, but because of the way their offense grinds out the ball, right? And I think that might be a factor. And I do think, you might not like to hear, but I do think maybe Lamar comes out a little rusty. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm. No,
sticking to it. But if they blow him out, I wouldn't be surprised at all. But I just think it's a little bit tighter than people think. And I think Baltimore wins, call it 30-21, 30-23, something like that.
Okay, I respect that. All right, moving forward here. The next game on the slate, we got Houston going against the Kansas City Chiefs. And earlier this season, Houston went into Kansas City and beat Kansas City, score of 31-24. And this game, I remember watching this game, or following this game, I should say, when they first played. And it looked like Kansas City was about to go and just destroy Houston. Like, it was up 17-3 at the end of the first quarter. It was looking real bad for Deshaun and company. But then I don't know what happened, but Houston flipped the switch.
Do you know if Mahomes played in that game?
Yeah,
Mahomes played?
Yeah, he played the whole game.
Wow.
Yeah, Mahomes was like 19-35, 273 yards and 3 touchdowns that game. He did most of his damage in that first half, or that first quarter, I should say. But then, yeah, Houston flipped a switch, and I don't remember the game entirely. I'm probably going to go back and watch the condensed version of it. But